Vision 2030 is North Adams' comprehensive plan for community and economic development. And 5 years into that plan, Mayor Thomas Bernard wants to see what the city has accomplished, what needs improvement, and what hasn't been tackled at all. We spoke in the studio.
That was really the first comprehensive plan that North Adams had done in over 30, close to 40 years at that point. And it was important to look at that, just to think about how much had changed in the city over that period of time, and to do two things. One, to develop a roadmap for what it would look like to project 15 years into the future where we want to be, but to engage the community really deeply in those conversations, having a good volunteer committee led through the Office of Community Development, but then stakeholder input sessions on a number of the topics related to the plan.
And so now you're 5 years into that 15-year look, give or take, and the Community and Economic Development Board, you've asked them to take a look at it. Why did you want to have them review what's happened?
Well, because it's important, when you talk about strategic plans or comprehensive plans, there's this statement everyone makes about you don't want a plan to just sit on the shelf.
Collecting dust.
Collecting dust. That's it. And ours hasn't. The good news is it really has driven decision making. I refer to it, the Office of Community Development, when we look at things like the Community Development Block Grant priorities, get involved with looking at it. People in the community talk about it. We've had some conversations about food access, and a member of the City Council who brought that forward referenced some of the food infrastructure pieces of the plan, and really said, well, this is what we're saying about ourselves. Developers and people who are interested in doing business in North Adams say, we know you have a plan. So it was a chance to take a pause, see where we've gone. What are the things that we can put a big check mark next to? What are the things that we feel like we're behind on and need to put more attention to? And then what's changed in the last 5 years that says something that at the time that the plan launched felt like a priority, we may think about it differently. I was flipping through before we came in, and even something basic like the data about schools. We have, since the plan was launched, closed one elementary school and opened a new school. So when you talk about neighborhood context, that becomes part of it.
So for people who aren't familiar with the plan, it really looks at 5 central areas. There's economic renewal, investment in aging infrastructure, creation of a thriving, connected community, intergenerational thinking, and fiscal efficiency. So you're kind of a mix of tangible and intangible. How do you get at quantifying the intangible stuff?
Well, that's where this idea of starting the review came from for me. I was looking through it, and it's seven areas, 7 priority areas.
Oh, I missed 2. What are they?
I think it's historic preservation, and then again the food piece.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But I started looking at it. I said, okay, so it's 7 priorities, it's 43 goals, it's 7 priorities, 43 goals, 95 policies, 355 actions. And I asked that same question, how does anyone get their arms around that? So accompanying the plan is an implementation matrix, literally a checklist of all of the things that are in the plan, which runs to 25 pages. And no one can really keep an eye on that solely by themselves. And doing a check-in like this allows us to identify both what have we done, what do we need to do, but then who are the partners, who are the people that we should be bringing in to talk about historic preservation. What pieces has the Historic Commission been working on? What are some things that we can task to them? Some of the outdoor recreation pieces have been taken up by groups like Mass in Motion through the Northern Berkshire Community Coalition. They just started partnering with us on a grant through the Franklin Land Trust to do tree planting. So there's a priority or an action about shade trees and tree planting, and we've got some support to do that. But it's then being able to say, aha, that was something in the plan. How do we make sure that we're recording that and reflecting it?
And so looking at that 25-page checklist, you actually brought someone in, a former MCLA graduate, now working with Berkshire Regional Planning, to oversee this. Zachary Fury, am I saying that name correctly? Good. And so as he undertakes this, he's taking about 6 months to look at this, starting with some public input sessions.
Yeah.
What do you hope to hear from the public over the next month or two as you embark on those input sessions?
What are the things that are most important to the community? Again, no one individual, no one group can tackle 355 separate actions and do them all effectively. So how do we set some priorities for the next 5 years of the plan to say, here's where we've been, and in that time, things have changed. I talked about some of the smaller actions, but tourists opened as a direct consequence of the presence of Mass Mocha,
Which
and
is a motel for
a
people
motel,
who aren't aware
in the
yeah.
west end of the city. But they're very interested, as their larger development plans move forward, in neighborhood revitalization, reflecting the historic character of the neighborhood. They're interested in activating the property that they have for outdoor recreation. So these things align. We've got a guy named Dave Morazy who bought a mill and just cut the ribbon on it this past weekend. In about 2 years, he filled it with 44 businesses. The hard part is it's not right down in the core of downtown on Main Street.
Greylock Works, is that the one?
No,
you're
this
referring to?
is the NORAD mill.
Oh, okay, great.
And Greylock Works is another place where they're talking about food and agriculture, outdoor recreation, housing development.
Also sort of set apart from the center of the city.
Set apart from downtown. But what Dave has done is he's created this business incubator, but also this community. So you've got a coffee roaster, a wine cellar. He's got the computer bug, the computer repair place. There's a therapist's office. There's a financial planner. There's a gem and mineral place. There's a gym. All of it in this building. So and a number of artists as well. So there's a community. It's bringing the community into this space and really being a gathering place.
As you flip through the plan, it's sizable.
Yeah.
Are there areas that jump out to you as, we are not hitting the mark on X, Y, or Z?
I think the first section, and really in some ways the largest section of the plan, is the economic development section. And I don't think we're necessarily not hitting it, but that's a place where some review and some cohering of the strategies and the priorities could really help us. So we get a little more focused as we do this. Again, to set that list of immediate priorities by distilling some of what's in there. For example, there's a lot of emphasis placed on marketing and
Marketing of the city
marketing
itself?
of the city itself. And we've done really good work with things like signage. We're working with a small MassWorks grant on a digital wayfinding project that should roll out in the next couple of months. And what's great about that is we thought we were behind the curve, and we're going to end up with a tool that is hopefully a model for other communities that will help to attract. But really making sure that our marketing efforts the city marketing efforts are being done in collaboration with One Berkshire, which is doing larger planning. We're collaborating with the North Adams Chamber, collaborating with the North Adams Partnership, which has done their own study, and just making all of these things align so that everybody's focused on the same set of immediate priorities.
One of the things that Mr. Ferry, who's overseeing this review of the 15-year plan, of the first 5 years of it anyway, he told the Berkshire Eagle that he wanted to make sure that a range of people come to the table and give their input. How do you get at that, cracking that nut? Because I think that's very common in communities where you hear from the same group of, invested folks, but how do you reach out to new people and hear from them?
I think it's all of the marketing tricks. It's hitting every channel. It's letters. It's opportunities like this to talk about the plan and to share that information, driving it to the city website. The previous planning process really did have a robust site where the evolution of the process was documented, and I would see us continuing to do that. It's hitting people on social media, and then it's going with word of mouth. So to bring it full circle to something you mentioned, which is CDAB, the Community and Economic Development Advisory Board, one of the things I've done in this first term is to kind of reinvigorate and revitalize that group by adding stakeholder representatives. So having a member of the committee or the board who is a member of the city council, having a school committee representative, having somebody from Mass MoCA, having somebody from MCLA, along with the community and at-large members, so that they can work their networks and they can help to build stakeholders. And again, we have a lot of people who were involved in the plan the last time who are still involved through CDAB, and I know that they'll help to influence that as well.